So there's this story in John's Gospel where Jesus and his disciples were about to walk through a city gate, the place where the poor and the sick and the outcasts they're just begging just to survive. And they look over and they see this man, a man who from the time he was born couldn't see, and they start bugging Jesus. They're asking him like, Rabbi, who sinned causing him to be born blind? Was it this man or was it his parents? You see, that's this nasty little belief that was a part of the ancient worldview that disabilities or financial losses or mental illness or anything of that sort weren't just random consequences of genetics, living conditions, or the ebb and flow of the market. No, they were evidence that you or someone in your family had sinned, and now God is making you pay for it. Think about that for a moment. Not only did people live in a world that didn't understand and didn't know how to treat these conditions, but they lived in a world where everyone around them saw it as something they deserve because of sin. And there in that moment when Jesus and his disciples, they encountered this blind man, those disciples were too interested in finding out who sinned, who messed up in such a big way, that lifelong blindness was the punishment. They were so interested in getting that answer that they were blind to this man's humanity and his dignity. They were blind to the effects of a life lived on the margins. But Jesus knows this is junk theology, and he refuses to give them the type of answer they're looking for. In fact, he doesn't even really give them much of an answer. It wasn't him, it wasn't his parents. The world doesn't work this way. God doesn't work this way. And so Jesus does this funny thing. He spits on the ground. Spits, it's this word used one time in the entire New Testament. And he makes some mud from that spit and he puts it on the man's eyes and tells him to go and wash his eyes out in this pool in town. And so he does it. And somehow this blind man with mud in his eyes makes it there to this pool, the pool of Siloam. And it works. The man born blind, now he can see. The disciples, they're not the only ones who don't get it. All this man's friends, they don't recognize him. And so he had to tell them the story about Jesus and the spit and the mud and the pool. And the man's friends were so concerned with trying to figure out how and who and what all of this happened that they couldn't see the transformation of their friend right in front of them. They couldn't celebrate it. They were blind to it. So the friends took him to the Pharisees to see if they could sort it out. And the man born blind tells them the story, the one about Jesus and the spit and the mud and the pool. And even the religious leaders couldn't see it. And they were so wound up, so obsessed that Jesus was healing this man on the Sabbath, the day of rest, that they couldn't see the implications of this man's transformation. It wasn't just that his sight was restored, but it was his entire life. He's no longer marginalized. He's no longer blamed for something that's out of his control, but the Pharisees couldn't see it. The disciples, they failed him. His friends, they failed him. The religious authorities failed him. And later on in the story, even his family fails him. The only people in this story who could see were Jesus and a man that had been blind for 99.9% of his life. The last couple weeks, they felt like years. And just in these couple short weeks, almost every facet of our lives has changed. I've struggled to find a single area of my life that hasn't been completely altered by the events that are unfolding around us. In 2 weeks' time, our family went from being excited about spring break. We were gonna fly out west, we were gonna tour Zion National Park, we were gonna take in the beauty of the Grand Canyon, and we were gonna do some entertaining on the Vegas Strip. But instead, we're enjoying spring break, the spring break scene inside of our house. We're touring our closets. We're taking in the grandeur of our stairwell. We're entertaining in the living room, hoping that we won't find that very last nerve we're all trying to get on. A month ago, I had never heard the term social distancing. And yet today, I'm on my social media accounts begging people to stay inside, to hashtag flatten the curve. Colleges and universities are closed. Libraries, restaurants, bars, barbershops, museums, Disney World is closed. They're all closed, and some of them perhaps are never going to open again. The shelves at my local grocery store, they're barren. 2 weeks ago, New York had 76 positive tests for the virus. Today, they have over 10,000. Look, I'm not going to blame you if you're like the disciples who wanted to know why the man was born blind. I want to know why all this is happening as well. Why is this happening? Where is God? What is the point of this? I'm having trouble with my vision. I'm having a hard time, honestly, seeing God right now. Look, I know these things are impossible to answer. There's never a satisfying answer to why it's happening. It's not like this is the first time we've grappled with things like this as human beings. Think of the last century alone. There's been enough of these nightmare scenarios to fill a millennia. The trenches of World War I, the Holocaust, the atomic bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the killing fields of Cambodia and Rwanda. That's enough to make you wonder if God has a grace-filled plan, a providence for humanity. At this point, I'm having trouble seeing it. I need Jesus to put some spit-filled mud into my eyes to give me sight to make sense of what we're going through right now. You know, it's interesting to me that the lectionary pairs this story about the man born blind with one of the most beloved verses in the entire Bible. Psalm 23. You heard Amy read from it a little bit earlier. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his namesake. And even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. You know, this week we've used some of this extra time we've had together as a family to put together puzzles. As you can see, I'm working on one here. Over the years, we've given our daughter quite a few of one. We've given her this really big one that's a circle that lays on the ground that talks about a lot of the different nations of the world. There's this other one. It's really cool. It's this giant map of the United States that she puts together. We even got her one of those blank ones that you can draw on, sort of like make your own puzzle design. Recently, after losing her first tooth, the tooth fairy gave her a puzzle that had all the different cat breeds on it. And she took it apart this morning, except for one little part. She left the portion together that had the American short hair in it because she wanted to keep the part together because that's the breed of our family cat, Boomerang. Her favorite puzzle is actually this 100-piece puzzle I'm working on now. It has these 4 ballerinas dancing on it. Now, there's nothing special about it. Honestly, it looks like something you'd get at a dollar store or something like that. But it's her favorite. We probably put it together like 30 times. And what's funny is that this puzzle, despite putting it together with her so many times, I always forget, I swear I do, I always forget that it's missing a piece. It surprises me every time. Ashley and I know the puzzle so well that it's almost become a race to see if we can put it together faster than we did before. We know all the puzzle pieces so quickly because we know the colors of each dancer's dress. We don't even need to look at the box anymore. We just know it. The image is singed into our minds. But still, I forget it's missing a piece. Psalm 23, I think, is like that for me. I've heard it, I've read it so many times, and yet I'm surprised each day to find that I'm missing pieces of it. There's parts of it that I've yet to discover. And this season of social distancing and this radical life change we're going through has sent me sifting through couch cushions for answers. I'm crawling under beds looking for those missing pieces, and I struggle to understand, why is all of this happening? Where is God in all of this? And somewhere, I don't know where, either under a cushion or beneath the bed this week, I feel like I found one of those pieces with Psalm 23, and it began speaking to me in a new way, giving me new eyes to see. You see, when I've read, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." I've always assumed that the good news of that passage is that the shepherd is leading me out of the darkest valley, or that the shepherd will change the darkness level of the valley. But that's not the way that this shepherd leads. The good news isn't that God is going to make everything okay, or that God is going to fix every problem, or that God is going to prevent every tragedy. The good news is that God is with us. We're not alone, even in the darkest valley, where our deepest troubles and our deepest fears reside. In that place where no one dares to come with us. Even there, God is with us. The level of the darkness hasn't changed. It's still bleak. Fear and suffering and tragedy and doubt, they're all around us. But what's different is that we are changed. And those things hold no power over us. Because in this valley, God is with us. There's this word in the last verse that we have a hard time translating accurately. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Shall follow me, that word for follow. It's tough to make sense of in Hebrew. That version of that word in Hebrew occurs exactly once in the Hebrew Bible. I think for most people, it sounds like following God as your shepherd is some sort of guarantee of a charmed life. It's like the biblical equivalent of, "and they lived happily ever after." Unfortunately, I'm sure your experience is like mine. It shows me that that's hardly the case. But the word for follow can actually be translated as pursue. Surely goodness and mercy shall pursue me all the days of my life. God's goodness and mercy are chasing after you. Even if you run the other way, even if you try to hide from it, God's goodness and mercy will not be deterred. It's pursuing you, even in the midst of the darkest valleys. Healing and love and compassion still can be found. When my daughter falls down out back when we're playing soccer in the backyard and she skins her knee, often all it takes is a simple kiss to bring about the healing. And what's interesting is it doesn't mean the skinned knee goes away. It's still there. But the darkness of her valley starts to dim. Because that simple act of love and compassion makes all the difference in her perspective. Suddenly, the valley doesn't seem so deep. The walls around us don't feel so imposing. And those glimmers of light, we can feel that they're finally starting to reach us because darkness is losing its power over us. So the good news today isn't a fairy tale ending. It's not a promise that it's going to get better from here or that the end is going to come quickly. The good news is that in this dark valley, God is with us. And even though goodness and mercy might not be here yet, and they might not be with us at every moment, they are pursuing us and can break into everyday life, restoring sight to the blind and giving us new eyes to see this valley around us. In the name of the Father and the Son and Holy Spirit, amen.